Not the host?
Yeah.
It's a pound.
Okay.
The host has not yet arrived. Please stand by.
All right. Well, we're just waiting.
Do we need to? We can use our key again.
I don't think we need to. What is it?
Password? Maybe if we were the host.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it says host password. Not the host.
So you be focused on questions. I'll be focused on notes.
Okay.
You can introduce the what our class is, what we're doing, and then we'll introduce yourself, and I'll introduce myself as a
Okay.
note taker.
So what do I say about the class? Like,
Just a supply chain class, learning about procurements and supply chain business process. No, the supply chain.
Your conference
process.
will begin momentarily. Please continue to hold.
I'm gonna
Supply
take out the
management
book.
system.
Okay, I'm gonna take out the book just in case.
Supply chain. Supply management systems. We're trying to just be SMS.
She asks a question. Wait, hold on. Let me look for it. Chapter what? You never know. Gotta be prepared.
How'd you get your book?
Huh?
Was it a used rental?
It's from Czech, so I'm renting it.
They're even uber expensive. So.
So I was like, nope, Czech store. And then I got taken, I didn't even need it. I bought this, it's supposed to be like a test study guide. I tried to use it for the last test.
I suppose you did.
Oh, I got an A. So
Right on.
I'm just happy. I'm like, yay.
Took me 3 days, but I think I did well. So
Yeah.
I looked at it, and she only took 2 points off. That was nice.
Your conference will begin momentarily. Please continue to hold.
But for the book, I actually inquired the instructor, and she said, "Yeah, it is pretty expensive. You can buy it online."
There are
online.
two
So I bought it on
participants
eBay,
on the
but I bought
call,
international
including
version.
you.
Oh.
So
You
it
are
was
now
one-
being
like
joined to your
fourth the
conference.
price. I'm gonna
For a
give it
menu
fourth
of
the price.
available
Yeah.
commands,
But the
press
content's still the same.
star
Oh.
pound.
Oh, wait, what did it say? I heard
At the
something.
tone, please speak your name.
Brenda?
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, is that Brenda?
Yes.
Good afternoon. This is Amy McClain.
Hi, Amy. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Very good. I'm here with one of my classmates.
All right, my name's Kevin. Nice to meet you.
Hi, what is your name?
Kevin.
Kevin?
Yes.
Nice to meet you, Kevin. What's your last name?
Walsh. Like Welsh, but Walsh?
Walsh?
Yes.
Okay. Nice to meet you.
Okay, so the reason we asked to have this meeting is because we're both in a supply chain class. That's all about procurement and the purchasing process and supply chain. And one of our projects is to do a SWOT analysis on a company that's larger, that has more than 200 employees. And we all decided that Chrysler is a well-known brand. You guys have, the automobile industry focuses so much on supply chain that we just thought that it would be like our best choice. So we compiled a couple of questions for you, and this was between me and 4 other teammates that we compiled together. So if you first want to give us a little bit of your background, how long you've been with the company.
Sure, yeah. So I actually have Bill Milne here with me. He just arrived.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for inviting me.
So we have Kevin and Brenda, both students at Arizona State University, and they wanted to interview us. So part of, I guess, your first question is just understanding our career background?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll let Bill go ahead and start, because he's older than me.
Okay.
Okay, I started out at Chrysler. I'll try to do this briefly. I went to Michigan State for my undergrad, Wayne State for my MBA, then from there I worked at Chrysler for 5 years. And then I went on my own and I worked for a supplier, aluminum die casting company, and I also had a couple of other businesses. One was a.
Now he's choking. No, I'm just kidding.
I have to warn you, I had some surgery on Thursday, and I'm going to let Amy go first.
Okay, so he can catch his breath. Okay, so I've worked at Chrysler for a long time. I interned. I actually started working in the purchasing department as a summer intern a long time ago. And then I immediately after I graduated, I worked in purchasing. I bought seats, and I also managed all of our leather, our interior leather. Then I worked in logistics, and I managed inbound transportation, the purchasing, and actually the route design for 3 of our manufacturing plants.
Cool.
After that, I moved to a new team called Carrier Development. So again, this was a long time ago, but we were just launching satellite tracking for all of our material as it moved from our suppliers to our assembly plants. And we actually linked that to our suppliers' electronic information that they sent to us, so we could see by part number exactly where our material was. And we could proactively identify shortages, because some of our transit time with suppliers can be weeks. And in the old days, you really wouldn't know if a supplier was late until suddenly their material wasn't at the plant. And then I went back to purchasing in various roles and strategy and many other types of parts that I purchased. And my last position in purchasing was a really exciting one because it was with the integration of the Fiat and affiliate companies, and I was globally responsible for the chassis components, where we were looking at even including industrial and Case New Holland and all of that other fun stuff along with automotive, managing the supply base, developing commodity strategy, sourcing, everything globally came through my team. And now I'm back in supply chain, and I am actually managing the supply, both buy and sell of parts that are being shared between the NAFTA region and all of the other affiliate regions. Kind of a program management role.
Okay, we'll see if my voice works out. When I was at Chrysler, I was in supply. I had inbound logistics for all of Canada. Also was in purchasing, production purchasing, and Mopar. I had a stint in Mopar, and that's our service organization. When I left, I was in with an aluminum die cast company, and various roles there. Ended up being the vice president of sales and marketing there, and then that company was taken over by some private equity companies. And after that, I went out on I did some other things and ended up working at a school, a high school. And then from there, I came back to Chrysler right after the bankruptcy. Worked for Amy at the time in transmissions. And then from there, I went to powertrain, managed the powertrain group. Then drive systems, which is your braking and steering. And now I'm in product development, and I'm responsible for the vehicle side, and that would be our KL, which is our Cherokee, our Dart, our new 200, and there's a couple vehicles I'm working on right now, or my group's working on that I can't tell you what they are, but they're exciting vehicles. And also I've had the opportunity to do some entrepreneurial. I own some real estate in a couple different states. I've had a couple online businesses that I've sold, and I've done some teaching also.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that background. I mean, any information that we can get is going to be helpful in this project. So I guess now I'll move on to some of the questions that our team compiled for you guys. And I mean, feel free to jump in and ask questions. I mean, if something doesn't make sense or something, and we'll try to explain it better. So our teammate Brittany asks, what would you consider to be the biggest risk or threat to your supply base?
The biggest threats?
Yes. Risk or threat.
I would say, well, it depends on the region. So if I look just selfishly at NAFTA, I would say the biggest threat right now is lack of capacity
Okay.
for our supply base, because the industry went through a pretty large downturn in 2008 through 2010, and a lot of capacity was removed from the supply base. And so as the industry has rebounded and we have a lot more demand than we do supply.
Okay.
And even with some of our suppliers, even though they've got a good business case to install additional capacity, credit is not just flowing freely. So there still are some concerns with those suppliers getting the financing to support the capacity growth.
Okay.
So I think that's one of the biggest ones. Do you have any other ones?
I would agree with that. And just expound on it a little bit. We see it from the tier ones, and we have some major tier ones, and then they have to manage their tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers. And generally where we have the supply issues is at the tier 2 and tier 3 level. And there's been instances where we have to get involved and actually manage the tier 2s and tier 3s with our major suppliers. And we have to do it to ensure that we here at Chrysler can ensure that we have supply that we need going forward. Whether it's the raw materials or it's castings, 3 or 4 years ago it was tires. So we have to make sure we have our eye on that, and we can't lose sight of it that there's tier 2s and tier 3 that really can hurt us. And then another area is labor. There's some areas, especially outside of United States, where labor is a real issue. We need people to work 6 days a week. Companies work 6 days a week, and some labor forces don't want to work 6 days a week, especially in Mexico. They want to work 5 days, and there's just not enough people because all these companies are concentrated in one general area within Mexico, and there's only so much labor that can work it.
And they don't care how much money you throw at them. They're like, no, I want to spend Sunday with my family.
Right.
So.
And we're even seeing that in some areas in the United States, which is, I was really surprised that there's just not enough labor. So that's become an issue, and it goes back to you go out of a bank. Everybody was bankrupt,
including us,
including Chrysler, and then when you take capacity out, so all these machines that are in our tier 1s and tier 2s and tier 3s, it's easy to take it out, but to bring it back, it's taken some time to do that. And as Amy stated, the money to make it happen is just not there yet.
Okay. Do you see that changing in the future? Do you think that's going to be like a long-term change, or do you see anything happening within the next 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, it's changing, and it's definitely gotten better in the last couple of years because more money is flowing. It's just not to the level. So at our tier 1s, there's been cases where 2 years ago they couldn't get their board to approve putting in new casting machines. But now in the last year they have received money to do that or open up new machining facilities where they can do additional machining. So it is getting better. It just takes time.
And I think just to add to that, one thing that we've done, I would say on our side to control a bit more of our destiny is we now have more global platforms where we've got a lot more shared parts that we are industrializing in multiple regions. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we'll have a common part that is, we'll source that same part in multiple regions, and if we do have a capacity issue in one region, although it's not efficient, we can always pull those parts from a different region.
Yeah.
So we can kind of balance what's happening within the global economy. Europe's down right now, but NAFTA's growing. LATAM's growing, China's growing, and I think that's one thing that we're going to be able to do to mitigate that.
Okay. I mean, that's awesome. You kind of answered our next two questions. So the other question that Brittany asked was, does your department cross-source? If so, which products?
When you say cross-source, you mean source to multiple vendors or multiple locations?
or multiple regions.
Is that what you mean by cross-source?
I guess we're confused on that as well because we're not quite really sure as what she was getting at.
Let's do this just to be safe. Let's say it's what we call dual sourcing. That would be sourcing to two suppliers. There are components we will do that where we do the dual sourcing.
Okay.
And generally we do that where we feel we have capacity concerns, and we'll dual source parts. It's not something we do very often, but we do it. And then the question maybe for cross-sourcing, maybe regions, and this is what Amy was alluding to. We have a part and we have a platform that you hear global platforms, and GM's probably the number one global supplier, truly global. And Volkswagen's probably the next closest to that.
You mean automotive manufacturer?
From that side of it. And they'll have a platform where they'll have the same part for their vehicle here in North America that they'll use in Europe. And that's our goal. We want to be a global manufacturer, and where we could source to.
I just looked up what cross-sourcing is on my iPhone.
Okay.
It's the same.
It's the same as dual sourcing. So that's cross-sourcing. So we do that.
Okay.
Not very often, but we do it.
Okay. So you're working to become a global.
Well, you said you used it. Don't use it that often. So what do you use it? When you do use it, what do you actually use it for? What products?
I mean, it's really a business case. Everything is a business case of cost and benefit. So, for example, I'll give you situations right now where we've got a global platform, a vehicle that's going to be built in Europe, in China, and in South America. And so what's really exciting is we have purchasing representatives in all three regions, and they are quoting multiple scenarios. One supplier location that supports the entire globe, multiple supplier locations that supports each region, and all combinations in between. So with that, we look at the cost for new investment versus the variable cost synergies, plus the logistics and supply chain risks that go with each scenario. So I guess my answer to you is it depends, and we try to take a very thoughtful, analytical approach to each sourcing decision to make sure it's optimized.
Okay. Okay, and then my question for you guys, and this was from me talking to another one of my teammates, and we thought that, I mean, each brand, you guys obviously have 5 brands, and each one is like completely different. Do you treat each supply chain for each brand differently? Is it unique in its own way, or are they all kind of like treated the same?
So when you talk about supply chain and we look at logistics networks, it doesn't matter what the brand is. Everything is pooled together to get the economies of scale for that. However, when you look at some of the details about supply chain management, some of our smaller niche vehicles, like the Viper, in SRT that are low volume vehicles, we may end up outsourcing a larger part of that assembly because we can't make the business case to have all of our UAW people assembling every piece of the car. So we may have one supplier that's doing all of the body and painting for the Viper vehicle. When you look at our Jeep Grand Cherokee, we would never do that. That would all be done within the walls of our assembly plant. So I would say rather than a brand specific, it's more of the business case of that individual product.
Yeah, and with the niche vehicles for the SRTs and the Vipers, it's a different product. So if you get on for the drive system, sometimes it's a chassis. So this is where with steering and braking the car, that's really unique when you're looking at SRT because the performance of that vehicle requires there's more challenge to hit some of the technical requirements. So there has been cases where we have to go to outside of our traditional supply base, but we have suppliers for rotors that are NASCAR. They mainly deal in NASCAR, and we have them as suppliers.
Oh.
because it's so unique what we're trying to accomplish with the SRT.
And then we usually try to brand it too.
Yeah, and we do, and we're not the only company. There's some of that, you've probably heard of Brembo brakes. So it's more marketing driven. They're great products, calipers. So that's kind of where it's outside of our traditional supply base, but it's because if we don't do it, we're not going to be able to sell that type of vehicle and command the premium that we need for that vehicle.
One other example of where the supply chain is impacted by brand would be the Cummins diesel engine. That's a differentiator that we have that makes impacts our brand. So Ram and Cummins go together. It's a huge selling feature. Where otherwise we may have decided to industrialize, vertically integrate, and manufacture our own diesel engine. But because this supplier of ours had such a unique reputation in the market, it changed what our normal approach would have been. And there's a value to that. There's a value to the brand. And so that's why we outsource all of that versus making it inside.
Okay. Let's see. And then I guess going on to a different topic, my other question was, as you know, globalization continues, companies are pushing to be more sustainable. So how is Chrysler's supply chain, how are they effectively doing that, in ways to be more sustainable, or?
Is there any initiatives to do so?
Yeah, actually we have a lot of that. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at our sustainability report.
No, but I can definitely pull it up.
Yeah, there's a lot of information within that. We're not just looking at environmental. We're looking at making the community, the world that we live in, that we support, more sustainable. So we have a ton of initiatives. If you want to look specifically at the supply chain items, there are items referenced. You can just Google Fiat Chrysler Sustainability Report. Our last one was published for 2013. But if you think about what the core of designing a logistics network is, it's all about efficiency. Mm-hmm. It's all about finding the most efficient transportation mode, which in its sense reduces waste. So all of that is happening a lot. Even within our products, the products that we're designing obviously have higher fuel economy, less greenhouse gas, that sort of thing. But I would say the biggest change that I've noticed within the last 5 years within the culture of our company is really embracing the support of the communities that we live in. And that's been a huge change in our culture, where it's not only an endorsement, it's almost like an obligation where, our company is donating 20 hours per employee to go out and support volunteer activities, which is not something that we had really had that same amount of strategy. Mm-hmm. But I think when you go through the downturn, like our industry did, you start to realize how many pieces of the world we actually touch, and you're more thoughtful about that. But there are some, if you want to look at some of the very detailed initiatives, you can see them in the sustainability report.
Okay.
Was that change in culture due to or at least a contributing factor when it came to the bankruptcy? Or is this initiatives for more sustainability a idea that actually was before the bankruptcy happened?
I think it's always been there. I think it wasn't a focus. And I think what's changed, and this is my personal opinion, so I don't represent the views of Chrysler. Right. But what I've seen a difference is we have the influence of a European owner, which if you look at the European culture, they're much more social with a lot of their initiatives. They institute a lot more of the green initiatives before North America did. So I would say it's the influence of our ownership structure now, and then I would say it's also because we've been there. When you actually have been part of that minority where you see, at the blink of an eye, how your world can come crashing down, it gives you a better perspective to be more thoughtful of the community around you.
Okay. And I know we only have like 7 minutes, so I'll try and hurry this up. So this is in regards to contracts with your suppliers. I know that contracts, the way they were done before, have changed dramatically in now. So our other teammate Yang asks, how much analysis do you need to do before you sign a contract, and what is the role that the purchasing department plays in it?
Well, the purchasing department is the owner of supplier contracts. So all the way from the team that develops our standard terms and conditions to the actual detailed terms of the contract, like pricing and investment and that sort of thing, that is one of the main functions of the purchasing department.
Okay.
So the buyers and the management team within that organization, purchasing and supplier quality is its own organization. They are intimately involved with that.
And we have commodity strategies, and most of our strategic commodities, or in all of our strategic commodities, the commodity strategy will drive your sourcing decisions. And commodity strategy is developed through a cross-functional process, which will include purchasing, supply, engineering. On a lot of products, it's our design office, product development is part of that. And once you have your commodity strategy or a standardization plan, you do not deviate from that. It would take an extenuating circumstance to do that. So a lot of it is done up front. Once you have a commodity strategy, that's what drives the sourcing.
Okay.
In most cases, we go out 3, 5, 8 years, depending on how strategic the commodity is.
All right. So I had a few questions. When it comes to Chrysler's key business objectives, is there go-to objectives when it comes to your procurement or supply base for your individual jobs or your insights thereof?
So I'm sorry, you want to know what our key objectives are?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's pretty basic. From a purchasing standpoint, we are responsible for managing our costs to support the business case of the vehicle, so meeting the target price. We're also responsible for ensuring that our quality of the components that we purchase meets all of our expectations, so that our suppliers are meeting quality standards, delivery standards, any of our other key performance metrics that our suppliers have, including warranty. Everything about managing the supplier relationships to meet our standards and requirements is on the buyer's objectives.
Do you have any comments when it comes to key objectives like reduced lead time, reliability, scalability, across new products, or cross collaboration of new processes?
So when you talk about the couple that you just mentioned, if you say those again, I think I touched on them already. You talked about the cost of new products?
No, you spoke of the cost and then the quality and how those objectives are in procurement, but do you have any comments when it comes to focusing your strategy when it comes to lead time or reliability or scalability?
Okay, so when you talk about reliability, do you mean reliability of the supply chain or the quality warranty of the components?
More like the risk to having a supplier or a tier of suppliers, how assured you know that you're guaranteed to have a certain product at a certain time, that type of reliability, or you have backup plans, you have alternative suppliers if something goes awry. Because
right.
I think you spoke
That's
to it earlier.
Part of developing the supply base, ensuring that we have a supply base that is meeting all the metrics. And we have a business risk group, so we always monitor suppliers that we think are going into the red for whatever reason. It could be they have union issues, or we know they have credit issues, or they're going into chapter, or they're going into bankruptcy. So we monitor all that, and then within the metrics, There is cost, but some of the other metrics that are key to a vehicle as we design and develop a vehicle for production, we have to ensure that we hit the performance metrics of the components in the vehicle. We have greenhouse gases metrics that's very important for the company. We have a metric for CAFE, and those all come into play. We could sell, when we develop a new minivan, we may have to lightweight the vehicle in order to meet our greenhouse gas requirement or a CAFE requirement. And if we meet that, that will allow us to sell more trucks. And that may mean we have to we're going to have a greater cost for that vehicle. So all that has to be balanced. And that's one thing I see on the product development side as we're developing the vehicle. Those are more of the corporate objectives we need to hit. And then I have to bring that back to the purchasing team to ensure that we hit those metrics.
And I think to add to that, like every sourcing decision is a blend of all of those things that you just suggested. So because we've got a lot of good data on our current suppliers and our new suppliers, we have a very robust evaluation process. Within that sourcing decision, we include, okay, should it be sourced to multiple sources or just to one? And there is an analysis and a decision. There's also that we call a total landed cost study. So embedded within the sourcing decisions, we quantify the cost of inventory carrying costs if the supplier is located far away. We've recently included a risk factor for shipments that come from international because we've got a lot of data that shows we will likely incur a certain percent of expedites for those suppliers just because of the nature of the business. So I know it sounds really broad, but all of those key factors that you've mentioned, and that's why the buyer's job is so important. I mean, they have to pull together their logistics team, the engineering team, the quality team, in some cases even our manufacturing plants and marketing to get consensus on who's the right supplier to win that business.
So if you take all those key objectives for the sourcing, and this is Bill Milne speaking, in my opinion, the most important objective we have is to be successful on the purchasing side and the vehicle side is that we need to align ourselves with a supplier on our key technologies, so our strategic commodities, where we pre-source. We need to be able to pre-source. So that's sourcing early on in the process so we can ensure that we meet all these metrics, we achieve all the metrics, and we have enough lead time to make that happen. The earlier we get a supplier involved, it gives us the best chance to succeed in hitting every metric we need to hit because they become a true partner in achieving those metrics. So to do that, you need to have a trusting relationship on both sides.
All right.
And that, to me, is the most important, should be the most important objective as we move forward.
Do you think that has changed from past years, like prior to bankruptcy, like the relationship between suppliers and the company?
I don't know about prior to bankruptcy, but it's definitely changed in the last 3 or 4 years. I can't say the specific vehicles, but we have done more pre-sourcing the last couple of years, and we have objectives to do a lot more pre-sourcing. And that's to one, in most cases, to one source because we need to, there's the technology out there, we want to be aligned with a supplier that can provide that technology early on and develop it with our engineers. And they usually have the answers, the suppliers.
That was I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes to collaborating, the most important when it comes to your key objectives.
That's pretty much all we've been preached about in our book.
Yeah. I had my last question, I don't know if you hit on it so much as to what is your typical life cycle, but if we're running out of time, we're welcome to end it here.
Well, I think it depends by commodity. Obviously, our most expensive parts of the vehicle to develop and to manufacture are the powertrains. So like engines and transmissions, we have some that'll have like over a 10-year life cycle. But then, some of the tools are older than me. I'm just kidding. But then we've got certain parts of the vehicle that are refreshed like every model year or two. So a lot of the exterior components or some of those interior features. those will turn over very quickly. So it really just depends.
Generally, the more highly technical the commodity is, the quicker it changes over.
Okay.
Commodities are electronic, stability control. Those turn over very quickly. They're highly strategic. They have a lot of electronics in them, but they're also, it's in the braking, or it could be our telematics, which is
or navigation,
radios or navigation systems,
entertainment systems.
You know, and really the way you know is just you buy one of the car magazines, the True Car magazines. You open it up, and those are the commodities that generally are the highly strategic commodities, and the technology moves very quickly. Whether it's your electronic power steering, the telematics piece of it. Some of your braking, some of the stuff on our chassis.
Well, like body panels too. Like those are really small.
Well, so the body
low
panels,
strategic parts.
So and the body panels are more. I wouldn't call them highly advanced parts, but those have to change because that's.
Because we want them to have a new look.
They
want
the new. It's the easiest way to refresh a vehicle, and we call that a top hat. We're just changing. It's a lot easier to change that. I don't make it sound easy, but it's easier than from a technology side.
All right. Well,
I think that concludes all of our questions.
And so we have some questions for you now.
Yeah. Hey, I just wanted to let you guys know we're gonna. I'm actually included in the Arizona recruiting team, so we're gonna be down there for career fair.
Okay.
If you guys are over there, Arizona.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding me.
It's work. Come on. So if either of you would want to discuss any of the stuff in more detail, or would want to just would like us to give you any more insight, we'd be more than happy to meet with you.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. What
time was that?
We're going to be down there the week of September 15th.
All right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so Brenda or Kevin, just send me an email and let me know if you want to learn more about Chrysler, or even if you're interested in internships. I know you've already got one, Brenda, but anything more, full-time positions, etc.
Okay.
That'd be great. Was there questions for us?
No.
No?
All right.
I was just kidding.
Well, thank you so much for
Nice
talking.
to meet you, Kevin and Brenda.
Our pleasure. It was nice meeting you.
Our pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Bye. They're not even here and they still wave. I'm like, hi. Okay. And then I remembered, I'm like, this is all on video, so it's gonna be like, what is she waving to? The air.